Welcome to Radio Gloom, where we tell terrifying stories from all around the world. Whether you're listening from the mountains of Appalachia or somewhere far away, turn down the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, not every legend is just a story. Tonight, we're heading into the Appalachian Mountains, where the forests are ancient and some say they're still watching. For generations, the people who have lived in Appalachia have passed down many warnings, not myths, but warnings. They tell visitors never to whistle after dark, never follow strange voices, and never answer when something calls your name from the woods. Our first story begins with someone who ignored these warnings. Hello, listeners. My name is John. I live in the Appalachian Mountains, and so do my parents, but they live 2.5-ish miles away from me. I often have to walk a long trail to get to my parents' house, as the roads are too dangerous and often referred as a death wish, so I try to avoid driving them. One evening, around 7 p.m., I was at my parents' house. I checked my CCTV cameras that are located in my house, and I saw that my 11-year-old dog was vomiting all over the floors, so I decided to make a move back to my house. My father had always told me about the tales and folklores about the trail. He used to tell me that at night, the trails were extremely dangerous, and a man-eating creature would come out from hiding to haunt the people who choose to walk them at night. Since there was no actual evidence towards these tales, I never really believed them until last week. My father warned me that if I didn't get home in time for sunset, bad things would come upon me, and nobody would be there to help me. I just shrugged it off and said to him, "I'll be fine, Dad. I don't even believe in those stories anyways." My father gave me a concerned look and then continued to read the book he had his eyes glued on prior. I started my walk at 7:48 p.m. The sun was only just setting at that time, and it was only around 2 miles of a walk, so I was under the impression I could get back to my house in time. I was terribly wrong. I quickly regretted my decision to not bring my car. The floor was fully soaked and everything was slippery since it had rained badly at some point during the day, and it was due to start raining again in a few hours, but I was going to be home by that time, so it would be fine. Around 8:20 p.m., it started raining again. At first, it was only a light pour, and then it became extremely violent very quickly. This is when I realized that this would definitely slow me down. Around 9 p.m., I had only traveled a mile and a bit, so I still had a big chunk of a walk to go. By this time, the sun had basically set, and it was almost pitch black in the woods, but I had brought a head torch. My father said to me when I was a small child that the creatures didn't like light, and if I was to shine a light on them, they'd get extremely agitated and lash out on me. But I shrugged it off and continued to turn on my head torch on. After about 5 minutes of my head torch being on, I heard a big crunch close behind me. The sound sent shivers down my spine, but just as I thought that all of my dad's warnings were causing me to hear things that weren't actually there, but I was brutally wrong. I kept hearing crunching behind me and human-like footsteps following me. It got to the point where I had to turn around to check. The second time my head fully turned around, I was locking eyes with a 8-foot-tall creature of some sort. It looked slightly human, but its skin was dark, more like a mossy black color than human skin. It resembled melting plastic. It had a massive slit along its face, which I assumed was its mouth. However, it did not have any eyes or a nose. I turned forward again and started running back until I couldn't anymore. Before I even realized it, I was back at my house. I don't know how long I was running for or how far I actually ran, but I was definitely pretty shook. I am now sat in the comfort of my own home with my dog, who is still throwing up occasionally. I can't forget what I saw. I don't think I ever could. I want to say I was hallucinating, but I know I wasn't. I am never walking that path at night ever again. My name is Alex, and I've lived in the Appalachian Mountains my entire life. If you grew up here, you learned the difference between being scared and being cautious. I've heard coyotes that sounded like women screaming, foxes that could make your blood run cold, and black bears wandering through the yards in the middle of the night. There's almost always a reasonable explanation to almost everything. About 3 months ago, my fiancé and I bought a small house deep in the mountains. The nearest town is about 20 minutes away, and our closest neighbor is over a mile down the road. We wanted the quiet. We wanted to be left alone. For the first week, everything was perfect. And then, she stopped sleeping. Every morning she'd tell me she heard something walking around the house. Not random noises, but slow footsteps that circled around the porch and stopped outside our bedroom window. I'd tell her it was a deer or a bear, but she always shook her head. "They're footsteps," she'd say. "2 legs." I laughed it off. I'd spent my whole life in these woods. I figured she wasn't used to how loud the mountains could be at night. For almost 2 weeks, the same conversation happened every morning. She'd look exhausted. I'd tell her it was wild life. Eventually, she stopped arguing with me. Then, one night, I woke up on my own. She was already sitting upright in the bed, staring at the window. Without looking at me, she whispered, "Did you hear that?" At first, nothing. Then, crunch, crunch. Slow footsteps outside, not pacing, walking with purpose. I listened, wanting to hear 4 feet moving through the leaves like a bear or a deer. Instead, the sound sounded directly beneath our bedroom window. Then came something that still makes me uncomfortable to think about. The whispering. I couldn't make out the words. It sounded like several people quietly talking over each other, just low enough that my brain kept trying to understand what they were saying. It wasn't coming from the woods. It sounded like it was right outside the glass. My fiancé grabbed my arm so hard her nails dug into my skin. "I told you." I got out of bed, unlocked my safety weapon, and grabbed another hunting weapon. I honestly expected to walk outside and find a bear standing against the house, or even maybe someone messing with us. I stepped onto the porch with a flashlight in one hand and the safety weapon in another. The yard was empty. I swept the light across the entire tree lines, and then I saw it. Standing just inside the woods, maybe 30 yards away, was something I still can't explain. It was unnaturally tall, pale enough that the flashlight caught it immediately. Then, almost impossible so, with long arms hanging at its sides. It wasn't hiding behind a tree. It was standing completely still, looking at me. I don't remember seeing eyes. I don't remember seeing a mouth. I just remember knowing it was looking directly at me. For a few seconds, neither of us moved. Then it leaned forward slightly, not like it was going to run at me, more like it was curious. I fired. The safety weapon echoed through the valley. The thing turned around and disappeared into the trees faster than anything I've ever seen. It didn't crash through the bush or snap branches. One second it was there, the next it wasn't. The sheriff came out the next morning. He searched the entire property, checked the woods, and eventually told me it was probably a bear or someone trespassing. There were no tracks, no blood, no signs that anything had been there at all. My family doesn't believe us. Most of our friends don't believe us either. The truth is, some days, I don't know what to believe. Maybe my fiancé's lack of sleep got into my head. Maybe I saw something ordinary that my brain turned into something else. We moved about 11 days after that incident. For months afterwards, neither of us talked about it. Then, while unpacking boxes in our new house, my fiancé found an old phone she'd been using when we first moved into the mountains. She was scrolling through old phones when she suddenly froze. "Alex?" I looked over, and she'd gone completely pale. She handed me the phone without saying another word. The photo had been taken almost a week before the night I saw the thing. It was an ordinary picture of our backyard at sunset that she sent to her sister to show how isolated our house was. At first, I didn't understand what she was trying to show me until she zoomed into a tree line. Standing between 2 trees was a tall, pale figure. The same shape, the same impossibly thin body, the same place I'd seen it that night. Neither of us had noticed it in the picture when it was taken. I've stared at that photo more times than I can count. What bothered me isn't what was there. It's what happened after I took a closer look. The figure wasn't facing our house. It was facing deeper into the woods, like it had been watching something else. I don't know what scared me more. The idea that I had been there long before we noticed it, or the possibility that whatever it was watching eventually left the woods and came to our window. I truly feel like the sheriff knew more than what he said. My brother, who we will be calling Kevin due to privacy reasons, had always been an outdoorsy. Growing up, he would wander off into the woods behind my parents' property and stay out there for hours. He said that being out in nature brought him a lot of peace. A few months ago, he kind of went into a spiral. He lost his girlfriend, his job, and his apartment within 6 weeks. He ended up moving back home with me and my parents to try to get back on his feet. It was hard to see him like that. I mean, he was never really someone that I can describe as an internal optimist, but that little spark he had always had was gone. The past spring, I found him sitting in the kitchen table in the middle of the night. He was picking apart a piece of cold pizza, and it was the first time that I had seen him almost eat something in days. I told him maybe he should get back out into nature, take some hikes, or maybe do a solo camping weekend. I said that I had noticed that he had seemed down lately, and maybe being out in the world could help him get back to himself. In the moment, I wasn't sure if he was really hearing me, but he took a bite of his pizza, squeezed my hand, said he loved me, and went back to his bedroom. The next morning, he announced to my parents that he was going to hike the Appalachian Trail. My mom was hesitant, but Kevin told her that he had knew enough about himself to know that sitting at home in his room was causing more stress than if he could go out and just be in a place that made him feel most at ease. My dad just said that as long as Kevin checked in every few days or so, he didn't see a problem with it. My dad pointed out that it wasn't like Kevin didn't have any experience. He was a Boy Scout turned Eagle Scout turned camping enthusiast. People do that hike all the time, Caitlin. If it were dangerous, no one would be bragging about it. I remember him saying those words exactly. I don't know why they stuck in my head the way they did, but maybe it was the way that Kevin seemed to brighten up a little bit more after my dad gave his blessing in some sort of roundabout way. The next 2 weeks were spent helping my brother pack what he would need, registering his hike, and buying a plane ticket to Georgia where he would start his trip. The night before he left, our mom was a mess. She kept fussing over him as he wasn't a full-grown man. She kept asking him if he had everything he needed, and he just kept assuring her that he did and would check in with us once he got to the trailhead. Looking back now, he seemed genuinely excited. If I had known what would have happened, I would have never let him leave. My brother called like he said he would. Just as he was beginning his trip, he even sent a photo to our family group chat that showed him up against a backdrop of purple blue mountains and lushy greenery. He had a thumbs up and his signature slightly off-centered smirk. He wrote, "Finally made it. Love you guys. Talk when I get better reception." Over the next few days, Kevin would send a photo or a video, usually of his surroundings, but occasionally he would send a selfie with the caption, "Proof of life." But as the days wore on, we stopped getting updates as frequently. What was a text at least once a day became a text every 3 or 4 days. My dad blamed it on spotty cell reception, which made sense, and it wasn't as if the messages stopped altogether. And for what I can piece together from his photos and short text bursts, he was making a good time. It was around a month and a half into his trip when we realized it had almost been 2 weeks without any communication from Kevin. We called the authorities. We gave them all the information that we had, but based on what we knew, it was that it was hard to even say he was missing. As far as the police were concerned, he had gone off the grid with the intent of going off-grid. Sending out a search and a rescue would cost thousands of dollars, and it could be a waste of resources, especially if there was someone else who needed it. They said that they would put a notice out to the ridge runners, and if they saw Kevin, they were told to tell him to contact us. My mom was furious, but I couldn't necessarily blame the cops for their response. We had no evidence to suppose that Kevin was anything but content out in the wilderness. A few days later, a text came through, just a photo of the sunset and the words, "Everything is okay here." That began the new normal of communication with my brother. There would be long stretches of time where we would hear nothing, just long enough for my mother to start panicking, and then we would get a blurry photo and a generic caption like, "Look what I saw today," or "Wish you were here." One night, while going through the photos that he had sent, I realized in the background of every shot from before we had called the police was a black smudge. It was too blurry to properly make it out, and it didn't seem to be an animal or something caught moving in the camera lens. But after the first photo that he had sent after we thought he had gone missing, the smudge was gone. Kevin came home earlier than expected. He also hadn't told anyone about his plans. One night, early during dinner, there was a large sharp knock at the door. My dad got up to answer it, and there he was, Kevin. His hair was long and stringy. He had grown a patchy beard over his cheeks and jaw. His lips were dry and cracked, and his gums were coated in dried layers of blood. He was real thin. He had lost at least 30 pounds, and he wasn't a large man to begin with. His clothes were filthy, cracked in mud and debris, and his shoes looked like they had been worn thin at the sole. My mother made a sound almost like a yap and rushed over to him. The smell coming off of him made me gag. It smelled like he had smeared rotten meat under his armpits. My dad just looked at him in shock. When he finally spoke, his voice was dry and raspy, as if he hadn't used it in weeks. "Mom?" That was all he could say before he practically collapsed in her arms. I won't bore you with everything that happened after that. There was a lot of hugging, some tears, and then a very, very long shower. But something didn't feel right. Kevin went to bed pretty much immediately after. He barely even looked at us. The next morning, he ate breakfast with a ferocity that made my skin crawl. He was gulping down huge mouthfuls of food, barely stopping to breathe. My mom just kept piling his plate with bacon, eggs, and toast. He stopped only after he had consumed a whole loaf of bread, 2 packages of bacon, and nearly 24 eggs. I tried to ask him about the trip, tried to get him to say anything at all really, but all I could get were grunts and uh-huhs before he lumbered back off to his room. The next few days were more of the same, Kevin eating the insane amount of food, sleeping for hours, and then mumbling his way through conversations. It took about a week for him to start communicating like a human being again, but even then, it was still awkward and unnatural. He's been home for almost a month now, and something isn't right. His voice, it changed somehow. It's still his voice, but it's like there's a second voice buried underneath it. Like someone is trying to harmonize while he speaks. He lumbers around the house, like his knees are locked in place, but he refuses to go to the doctors. The worst part is the smell. It still won't go away. No matter how often or how long he showers, he still reeks like death. I could have maybe ignored all of this, maybe blame it on being isolated in the woods for weeks, but after what happened tonight, I don't think I can. I couldn't sleep. That feeling of fear in my stomach I felt ever since he's been back, and it hasn't gone away honestly. It keeps me up most nights. I was trying to will myself up to sleep when I heard the back door creak open. I crept out of my bedroom and down the hall. From my viewpoint, I could see into the kitchen through the window into the backyard. I saw my brother, crouched on his hands and knees. He was twitching wildly, like every muscle in his neck had gone spasming. He winded his stance and thrashed his head towards the ground and out of my line of sight. I was worried that maybe he was having some kind of seizure, so I ran out to check on him, and that's when I saw it. His head was buried deep in one of our neighbor's cats. The animal had clearly been dead for at least a day or so, its body bloated and its eyes were dull and hazy. Kevin reached inside the body and started ripping it apart. I ran back into the house and I locked the door behind me. I was about to run back to my bedroom when the smell hit me. that horrible death stench that had been whiffing around my brother. I opened the door to his room and inched a few feet inside. Wrapped in his bedding were decaying bodies of 20 animals or so, all that you can think of. I tried to run to my parents' room to wake them up, to tell them that they needed to call someone. As soon as I turned around, I saw Kevin in the kitchen window, his body drenched in blood as he was eyeing me through the glass, his head tilted at an angle that shouldn't have been possible, the vertebrae in his neck strained underneath his skin. He lunged at the window and I screamed. My parents woke up then. They found me in the hallway sobbing, sweating, shaking with fear. I told them what I saw and my dad rushed outside to try, and well, I don't know exactly what he was trying to do with all that, but it didn't matter. My brother was gone. We called the police and they said it sounded like my brother had some sort of mental crisis. Maybe he picked up some kind of parasite in the woods that was impacting his brain chemistry. I know they're wrong though. Whatever that thing is not my brother. My brother left for the Appalachian trails and never came back. I think whatever that black smudge was in those photos was something that haunted him, and I think it was successful. Whatever that thing was killed my brother, and somehow his body came back home. My brother disappeared, but I am terrified he will come back. Some stories end, but others stay with you long after the radio goes silent. If you enjoyed tonight's episode, don't forget to please subscribe and become a part of Radio Gloom. New stories arrive in both English and Spanish, because fear speaks every language. Until next time, lock your doors, keep the lights low, and if something whispers your name from the darkness, don't answer.